Welcome to the Job Matchmakers Podcast, where we share stories from employment consultants about supporting people with intellectual and developmental disabilities to find employment in their communities, one person, one job at a time.
This podcast is produced by the Minnesota Transformation Initiative, a technical assistance center focused on expanding capacity for competitive integrated employment across Minnesota. We are your hosts, Sherry Healy and Brian Bajan, and we work at the Institute on Community Integration at the University of Minnesota. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to another episode of the Job Matchmakers Podcast. In this episode, we're talking with Danny Brady, an employment specialist with Reach for Resources.
Danny is the second guest we have had on the show from Reach for Resources. Reach is a provider here in the Twin Cities that offers employment services and other supports for people with disabilities.
Welcome, Danny. Thank you for joining us today. Can you tell us how you got into this work?
Sure. I got into this work because of my older brother, who is blind and has cognitive disabilities. During my time out of college, I was looking for something that wasn't tied to a desk. And being able to be my brother's PCA, which is how I started off in this work, gave me that opportunity to look for other jobs in this field. And during that time, my brother got a job at Pizza Hut, and he was in desperate need of a job coach. And Reach for Resources reached out to me and said, "Hey, we'd love to have you." So that's why I'm here today.
So the story you're sharing today is about a person who was fresh out of transition school when you started working with them. Can you tell us about the job seeker and how you helped them identify jobs that might be a good fit?
Sure. I work with up to 14 individuals, all requiring the same needs, all requiring the same services, the same amount of time, and the same amount of brain power. And being able to work through all of that, it's almost like having 14 different people in your brain all at once, right? And working with individuals is incredibly gratifying because you get to learn who they are as a person, but also their interests, their likes, their dislikes, all of that kind of stuff. And being able to take all of that information, I mean, it's the easiest way to translate into a possible integrated employment opportunity for someone. It's just getting to know them, getting to know what makes them tick and what makes them want to wake up each day. And being able to take that, translating that into a possible job.
Yeah, definitely important components of this work, as you say, is getting to know the person and developing that relationship. And so what are some of the techniques that you use to build that relationship with the individual? I mean, first and foremost, gaining their trust and the trust of any team members, parent, guardian that may be involved as well.
Sure. I think the number one aspect to that is being competent, right? Is having the ability to do what you say, is having the ability to work with individuals that you understand this case might be tricky, but you're not going to give up, right? And being able to have that confidence of knowing what you're doing and having the proper training helps out immensely. I think with the individuals that I work with, the number one aspect that helps me grow trust is just being real, is just being honest and just being a person to another person, rather than using that moment to downplay abilities or using that moment to talk about what you can't do rather than what you could do, right? And I think people respond to that in a way that genuinely makes a massive difference in the way that they receive services and the way that they have input towards services, rather than just feeling like it's work to them, right?
Yeah, research has shown that a strengths-based approach to the work yields positive results over the old mindset that was common not too many years ago in this sector, which was the sort of the deficits approach. One of the things that the MTI project is really focusing on, and that the Department of Human Services here in Minnesota supports or pushes, is that, like, having staff who have the training, right, to do the work is really key to get those quality outcomes.
Yeah, here at Reach, we are required to complete customized employment training through the state of Minnesota. Um, Not everyone has been able to go through that because it does cost a lot of money to send people through those programs. And depending on funding and stuff like that, some people might not even have the training. Thankfully, I was able to get the training. Outside of that, I mean, it's really dependent on what you want for yourself and what you see yourself doing in the future. Personally, I attend as many seminars as I can. I attend all of the APSE meetings as well to make sure that I'm up to date with whatever policies we're trying to push through in the state of Minnesota. I mean, I just try to stay up to date with anything that I can, and any opportunity to take free trainings, I'm there. You know, if I can get a certificate added to my name, I'm there.
There is one particular individual that you're going to talk to us about today that you helped to find a job, and he was interested in antiquing, thrifting, collecting items. Tell us a little bit about this individual that you assisted in their job search.
Yeah, so this individual, like you were saying, has an incredible passion for collecting items, going to thrift stores, finding odds and ends that he's able to resell, which I think is a really fun hobby. Being able to assist with that and witness as he goes to these toy shows and all of these different like estate sales and stuff like that, looking for the items he thinks that are worth something. And then being able to take those skills and translate it into a job where right by where I live, it's pretty tricky to say the least. I mean, there's not a lot of cool antique shops or places that offer thrifting. A lot of the places in the metro area, you actually don't get paid to work there. A lot of these antique shops, they rent out space and people will live there and they work during the day. I had no idea that was a thing. So being able to learn all of that with my person and then and having him feel like, oh gosh, there's just not anything out there for me. We stumble upon the Goodwill. And again, it's an incredible location. It gives him that opportunity to look at old items and being able to thrift around even after his shift is done. And when we went into that store to discuss possible employment, the manager that we spoke with was, I would say, less than friendly, less than inviting, I would also say. And that feeling not only carries over, like, not only do I feel that, but the person I support feels that tenfold, right? That feeling of inadequacy of why do they feel like I can't do this job, right? And that just didn't sit well with me. So I took it upon myself to work above the ladder and climb up and try to find someone who was able to answer a few of my questions. I knew from other employment specialists who have worked with Goodwill in the past and who have had other people who have worked there as well. And they said that there was no issue. It's been an incredible place because, again, Goodwill touts itself on having a fully integrated workspace, right? And to walk in and to have a manager say, no, that's not allowed. No, we can't have you in the building. Job coaches aren't allowed during training, this, that, and the other. It didn't feel right. And understanding their policies, I had to speak to somebody. So my climb up the ladder ended up leading me to the head of the HR department for all of Minnesota Easter Seals, which is the conglomerate that owns Goodwill here in Minnesota. And with those conversations, explaining what happened and explaining how it made my person feel, um, it was very obvious that there was something that needed to be done. And the person that I spoke to ensured me that she would move this to the place that it needs to be. And within a week, I was told that every single manager and every single Goodwill in all of Minnesota would have to be retrained on hiring. So, because of that fact, that manager, again, I'm not here to get anyone in trouble. I'm not here to judge anybody or anything like that. Of course, he could have been having a bad day, you know. Um, but at the end of the day, it does matter when you are, you know, the leader of a business and you're supposed to be the face of that business. Um, and you know, at once everything was said and done, uh, we went back to the gal that I was speaking with in HR, and then we were given a go ahead to apply to any location he wanted. Thankfully, my person, you know, with the bad taste in his mouth, left at the last location. We did find another location, and he was hired on the spot. And he absolutely loved the job. It gave him everything that he was looking for, with the fact that he was able to look at old items, thrift around, play around with the clothes, break glass in the back room, all of that kind of stuff. It just gave him an outlet to live his hobby, right? And I think he was very thankful for that. Um, and yeah, I mean, again, it takes a little bit of a push, a little bit of initiative. It's not something that I technically had to do. But the fact that I understood what Goodwill's policies were, it just didn't sit right. You know, I couldn't let that slide. Who knows how many other people were told no before my person?
And was this his first job out of school?
Yes, this was his very first job. Um, he was never in any formal transition program or anything like that, so I didn't have anything to go off of. No paperwork, no discovery, nothing like that. And we took it from just two guys hanging out and getting to know each other into being able to you know, find him that perfect job that really relates to him and his personality, his hobbies, all of that kind of stuff. I think the main goal is finding somebody a job that they're not going to dread when they wake up, you know? Um,
Yeah, no, I well said. And, I would argue this person is pretty lucky for their first job to match with so many of their hobbies and skills and interests. I feel like, well, at least for me, right? My first job in food service. I mean, I like eating food, but that doesn't mean I was like interested in doing dishes and whatnot. And it was just explained to me by like my dad and my mom, like, yeah, your first job, I mean, honestly, you gotta pay for gas for your car and your cell phone bill, and it's not going to be your perfect favorite job, and that's just the way it is. So this person is really sort of hit the grand slam. And also the tenacity that you showed as a job coach, I think, really highlights the importance of like job coaches not only having the proper training to be able to support people with different diagnoses and whatnot, having the skills to like build rapport with people and earn their trust, and then also like some higher level understandings of just like legality, right? Like what protections are allowed under the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, what job accommodations are legally protected. It's a lot for job coaches to know, but the folks that we work with are really counting on us to be those subject matter experts as much as possible.
yeah. And I think with my background in business, it gives me a little bit of a better understanding on how to communicate with some of these corporations, giving them the understanding that, again, that I'm not here to poo-poo on anyone. I just want the best for my people. And I think being able to get that message across, finding the right person to speak to, you can get just about anything done.
Well, and doing it with a level of respect and a level of collaboration and partnership, and coming at it from the perspective of, like you said, I'm not here to get anybody in trouble. I'm not, I'm not trying to make it difficult. I'm really just looking for a win-win and an opportunity for the individual that I'm supporting to be successful. And knowing that Goodwill, has a philosophy of supporting individuals with disabilities, then that didn't align with with who they are as a company. So I think your approach to it, in a way that could lead to a win-win for everybody, that was really important in how you did it. Because you could have just walked out and said, okay, well, that didn't seem right, but it is what it is, and we'll move on and try something else. But for that individual, it being his first job opportunity, that could have had a lasting impact on him in terms of his interest in working in the community. And that if you had let it go at that, it might really have had some pretty significant consequences for him and, his self-confidence and his, interest in being an employee with any company. So I think, what a great way to really search for that successful outcome. So well done.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And when you started working with this person, you'd mentioned that they didn't have any work experience in high school. Were they excited about work? Were they ambivalent? Or was it one of those things where like, well, I don't really want to do it, but my parents or whomever are like, this is the next thing, so here I am.
I think I've gotten very lucky with the folks that I've been working with, and the fact that a lot of them, if not most of them, are 100%. They have great input. They want a job. They want that aspect of a more independent lifestyle. Um, but there are folks who struggle to find that meaning in work, or even just want to get up and do something in general. Thankfully, my fella who works at Goodwill, I mean, his dream was to have a job so that he could buy gifts for his family members, so that he could go to Disney, all of those kind of things. And making sure that the job that he had wasn't too grueling was very important as well. Making sure that all of his accommodations were met were very important as well. And I think the reason he was so comfortable going from no experience to a full-on part-time job is because of the aspect that we prepared him beforehand, right? Rather than let's just walk in and see how it goes, right? Sometimes it feels like you're throwing someone like into the water, right? And hoping that they swim. But at the end of the day, as long as you prepare them enough, they're going to be just fine. And I think I've been very, very lucky with the folks that I've worked with, and the fact that they all love what they do. And if they don't have a job, they're still interested in looking for one. I haven't run into too many people who are, forced by their parents or anything like that. So I think that's very beneficial to my work in general.
Yeah, that's great. And really thinking about the reasons why work is important. We want to be able to buy gifts and buy things that we're, saving money for specific things that we're interested in. And all of that is important, as well as just the ability to contribute to society. And there's a lot of pride in that. And it's a component of an individual's life that is a really big part of of being a member of society, right? So it's an important thing, not to leave out, I think.
And I mean, again, it's a great way for the folks that I work with to meet new people, make new friends, and create lasting, long relationships that if they didn't have that job, they probably would have never had, right? Um, and it's very transformative to be able to watch these people become independent. And there are folks who completely bump off of Social Security because they're good, and it's phenomenal to watch, um, especially with the folks that might need a little bit more help. When you push and you push and you give them the support that they need, you'll be amazed at what anyone is capable of.
100%.
And what did fading jobs coaching supports look like for this individual? I mean, given that there was, a bit of a rocky start, I guess not only how did that play into how you faded job coaching supports, but also did that change at all how you would support the person through the onboarding process?
Yeah, sure. I mean, again, starting off, I was told I wasn't allowed to do onboarding with him. I was told I wasn't allowed to do any training. And then that was incredibly discouraging to my person who felt that they needed me there for that specific type of support. So once he understood that he was going to get that support, he was thrilled. He was happy. He was ready to go because he knew that I'd be there to help him. I think when it comes to weaning off on support, especially for a job in retail, it can take some time depending on the person and depending on their quirks and their what makes them tick and stuff like that. But with this specific individual, I genuinely believe just being a real down to earth person is all it takes. Is just, I'm not going to help you with this today. I'm going to watch you do it. You're going to do it. If you need help, reach out. Okay. And just having those conversations of, I know you can do these things. I know you're capable. And then supporting them to make sure that they believe that they're capable. Like, yeah, you can do just about anything, but you have to have the confidence to keep going with it. And I think the person that I'm speaking of specifically lacked a lot of that confidence. And it took building that confidence before he was even able to be on his own.
That's a great point. Job coaching is not just like, I'm going to be here to walk through completing process A, B, and C, and I'll be here until you really understand the instructions and get it. A big part of job coaching are those more like intangible things like encouraging and fostering self confidence and um, helping folks realize that they they got this, they can do it. Sure, it's going to be a little bit scary, but everything's going to be okay. And even as you're fading the job coaching supports, reassuring folks like, hey, I'm just a text away or a phone call away. It's certainly one of the benefits I would say of all the technology that we have is that maybe I'm not seeing you in person every shift, but like if something comes up, we can FaceTime and you can show me, what you're working on or what something you're running into and we can talk it through.
Yeah, and to quickly add to that as well, I think another incredibly important aspect to phasing off support, one that can't be forgotten, is having proper and functional natural supports within their environment, whether that be people or the accommodations that they have specifically for them. Um, with the person that I had working at Goodwill, he had an incredible crew around him. He had two managers that were just the kindest people. The hardest part is that's not everywhere, and depending on the industry, people are busy, they might not be able to come check in every so often. So having him in a place where those natural supports could really be there to support him, I think gave him again another boost of confidence saying, hey, I can do this on my own. And even if I feel like I can't, I've got someone right here to help me out. Right. Um, yeah, I think again, the natural support's incredibly important.
Yeah, I think one of the strategies that job coaches use is whether or not it's sometimes you might manufacture a situation so that you give the person an opportunity to work independently for a short period of time. So just even saying, hey, I got to make a phone call real quick. I'll be right back, and starting with, okay, I'm gone for 10 minutes, and being able to watch from the other side of the store, how does the person do when there isn't somebody right by their side? And how do the coworkers handle it when you're not standing right there next to them? You have to give the coworkers an opportunity to build those relationships. And sometimes it is out of necessity. You have another individual you need to support, and you can't be there for the full shift at that time. And sometimes you have to create those opportunities so that they have that chance to build those relationships with their coworkers and their supervisors without being in the middle all the time. So it sounds to me like you really fostered those natural supports and helped that to happen. And then, in boosting his confidence when he did well, when you weren't right there by his side. So I think that's a really important component of coaching, is the fading process and helping to, build those natural supports. So, Danny, one final question we ask all of our guests. What do you want people in your community to know about employment for people with disabilities?
I would say I would want people to believe that it's not impossible, right? I want people to understand that no matter your limitations, whether that be physically or mentally, no matter your confidence level, whatever it may be, if I'm able to support you, I can help you find a job, right? And there are plenty of other employment specialists who do an incredible job, who do incredible work throughout the entire metro. And the fact that we still see people saying like, oh, that's not possible. Oh, like, how do you see that working? It's like, we'll make it work. We have always made it work. And being able to get that message out of, this job isn't easy. I mean, it is a job that requires a degree, like a lot of other jobs, and it's a very thankless job depending on who you're working with, right? And the corporations that you're meeting with and building relationships with. It is a jack of all trades type of job, and I think it needs to be treated as such. I would say that not everyone could do this job, nor I don't think anyone should specifically do this job if they don't know that this is what they want to do, right? Just because, again, it takes an incredibly special mind to be able to go through this process, to have, again, 14 other people's lives swimming in your brain all at once, right? Yeah, I mean, this job is not impossible, but it's not easy.
Well said.
Well, thank you, Danny, for joining us today and sharing some of your experiences doing the work. And thank you, listeners, for tuning into this episode. We hope you join us next time to hear another compelling story of one person finding one job in the community.
Thank you for joining us for the Job Matchmakers podcast, funded by the Minnesota Department of Human Services. This podcast is a partnership between the University of Minnesota's Institute on Community Integration and UMass Boston's Institute for Community Inclusion.
For more information on the Minnesota Transformation Initiative, visit our website, linked in the show notes. We're glad you joined us, and we'll see you next time.